Hey everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to make a very cheap and nice looking Crested Gecko lay box. Now I was kind of struggling with this, so I thought I'd make a video on it in case any of you guys have some eggs on the way maybe, or you're thinking you're going to have eggs on the way and you're struggling on how to make a lay box, because let me tell you, the first lay box I tried to make is not pretty. It was so bad. So I thought I'd share some tips because I've learned a lot here in just the last few weeks trying to make these. So here's my test one. As you can see, I think it looks pretty nice. I did crack it a little bit, but in general I would say it looks pretty good. And these are pretty cheap too. You can get two of them for $3 at Walmart, so it turned out pretty nice. But at least in my opinion, I think that doing the hole in the middle is probably better than doing it on the side, at least for these ones, just because as you can see, these ridges on the outside here make it extremely difficult to cut through, and that's how I ruined my first one. But the things you're going to need is basically something to cut on. So I'm just using the wrapper from this the tubs. You're going to need something to cut it with. I'm using a razor blade, but like an X-Acto blade would work too, or anything sharp really, and that's scissors. But other than that, this is pretty simple to make. I'm not using any drills, anything to melt it with. I'm just simply using a razor blade and a scissors. Now I would recommend cutting on something that you don't mind getting scratches in, because you are going to need to cut through this. Now it may seem pretty simple to just cut through this plastic, but if you're using this razor blade like I was not able to just cut straight through it, at least on the edges closer to the ridges. So what I had to do is I had to go through here and score it, and basically what this does is it just makes the lines so you know where you're going to be able to cut it. So I just go ahead and I do this for the square. I make the square shape I want to have, and it doesn't really matter how square it is. Obviously if you're picky about it, you can draw lines, but I don't really care, so I was just cutting them freehand. So they did come out a little bit curvy on this one, but you know, that's okay, it doesn't really matter. So I was just going around just making sure I'm cutting edge to edge a nice little square. This brittle plastic like this is such a pain in my life, because I deal with so many of these tubs that I'm trying to cut through, trying to drill through, and they crack and they break and stuff. So that's quite annoying. But you know, hopefully if you do this, if you score it, hopefully will not crack. It still might, but for the most part it should stay in one whole piece. The first one that I made, on the other hand, was awful. It was absolutely awful. I almost had to throw it away, but I ended up just taping it together. But that one looks like trash. So this one looks much better. The test one I made looks much better. So that's nice. So basically what I'm doing is I just keep cutting it in the same line to see if I'm through or not, because you're going to want to get one side that's all the way through. So you just have to keep cutting it and cutting it until you can get all the way through it. And basically I'm just poking it. So right there you can see it's through. And then from here, the next step is to make sure that, you know, you're not going to bust it out obviously, but you might have to cut a little bit more in case the hole is not big enough. But you're just trying to make a hole in one side that's all the way through, like you can see here. So I'm just cutting it back and forth to make the hole bigger so I can get the tip of the scissors through it. So now I'm going to cut this. I'm going to stick the tip in there, through there, and I'm going to attempt to cut it, because what this is going to do is it's going to allow me to get the razor blade further in there, or the scissors if I need to, so I can just chop big chunks out of it. And if you're strong enough to go all the way through the plastic holding a razor blade like that, then you don't even need to do this step. But I could not get that little razor blade to go through without potentially cutting myself, so you just got to be careful too. Working with a razor blade like that is not always the best idea, and with an X-Acto knife, same thing goes. Be careful when you're doing this, don't cut yourself. And you can see I'm kind of an idiot and was putting my fingers out like that when I'm cutting, which is not a good idea, because if you slip or something, or it goes all the way through and you pull really fast, you're going to end up with a nasty little cut, and that's never fun. But what I'm doing here is now I'm just cutting to each corner so I can hopefully get the scissors in there better. And if you cut it deep enough when you were scoring it, hopefully some of these corners should break away a little bit like they do there. They'll just kind of pop, and then you can just kind of peel them off. But if not, you can always go back in with the razor blade and just slit them, as you'll see me doing here in just a second. So, and just like that, you can just basically peel them out. They should just pop off pretty easily. Don't step on those either. I stepped on one and it really hurt, so it's like stepping on a Lego, bad idea. So make sure you keep them somewhere, because those little guys are sharp. Now that I'm down to the last little chunks here, all that I'm doing is I'm taking the razor blade and just trying to cut them off, because some of them are very tight on there. They just don't want to come off. Even though I scored them, they don't want to break off either. So when this happens, I would just recommend trying to cut through it. Hopefully you have one of the other edges cleaned up enough so that you can get a nice straight cut on this. And eventually, if you just keep cutting it, it should just peel off just like it did right there. Now you have this. Now you might be wondering, is this going to be too sharp? Is it going to cut up my gecko? So what I'd recommend doing is just simply kind of scraping the sides, and you should be able to cut off most of the little jagged edges. And if you can run your hand over it and it feels smooth, it'll probably be okay for the gecko. If you're really nervous about it, you can spend a lot more time than I did smoothing up the edges with the razor blade. Once you get a hole big enough for the razor blade to fit in, it's pretty easy to smooth up these little edges. So like that feels good. This side's rough, so I'm going to cut that again because I don't want any little geckos getting hurt. But I'm just scraping off some of the excess plastic that was kind of left from me cutting with the scissors and me cutting with the razor blade. You can see a little chunk in the corner there. I'm going to cut that off. Don't want that left on here. And I also have this chunk that I was slicing off a little bit earlier, so I'm going to have to break that off too. But in theory, it should just come off easily, like that, and we should be good. So, but anyway, that's going to about do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hopefully this helped you out if you were struggling like I was. Anyway, I hope to see you guys in the next video, and I'll catch you guys later.